Hi folks, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the new leagues of Votann and giving them a pink and blue synthwave cyberpunk aesthetic. So without any further ado, let's cue the music. To start out with, I'll be applying a coat of Vallejo heavy purple on all of the armoured areas and technical gubbins on this Hearthkin warrior. I have thinned this down with a little bit of water, and you really need to thin these Vallejo heavy colours as they are very heavily pigmented and are quite thick and very similar to the base colours from Games Workshop. And it's just a matter of taking your time with thinning this paint down and going all over the armoured section of the model. Once your purple base coat has dried, the model should look something like this. Don't worry if you spilled over onto other areas, as you can always go back in and tidy those up later with other colours. The next step is to add some blue tones into the purple base coat, and to do this I'm making a 50-50 mix of heavy purple and heavy blue, both from Vallejo, and thinning it down with a bit of water to ensure that it flows smoothly off the brush. With this colour, we are looking to paint a majority highlight over all of the shapes on the armour panels, leaving the original purple in all the shadows and all of the recesses. I'm not looking to be too neat with the blend on this, I'm looking just to have that sketched in highlight. The idea is that once you've got this colour in, that base coat purple is more like what you'd see of a wash, it's very much in the recesses. If you keep the paint very thin, you can focus on doing this as a blend, but for what I'm doing on these warriors, as you're probably going to be painting a lot of them, I'm just sketching in this highlight. And I'm looking to see where the light would hit, so on his chest panels I've painted at the top and left the lower of his chest into shadows, and of the strips that go across his stomach, I've painted to the right hand side of the model, I've painted to a brighter and left that left, basically where the gun is and his left arm is going forward, left that bit in shadow. And it's just a matter of taking your time, going around the model and painting all of those raised areas where the light would hit with this 50-50 ratio. And this is what the Hearthkin warrior looks like once I've added that 50-50 ratio mix, focusing on where the light would hit. The next step, we're really going to start tinting the armour into a blue colour, and for this I have added another part of heavy blue into the mixture, so it's now 1/3 of the heavy purple and 2/3 of the heavy blue. And what I'll be doing is I'll be going round the model again, and I'll be really starting to refine these shapes. And once again, this is just sketching in highlights. I'm not doing too much to feather out distance between them. I'm trying to get that very sharp looking, like two different lights are shining onto the model, and so for this we can be quite rough with our highlighting. It also helps us get these models out quickly onto the table. And with this I'm really starting to redefine those shapes and starting to build up a transition of colour. In the areas that you want the model to look a lot more blue, start to focus heavily with this colour, leaving your purple into the shadows. And there's no real secret to this, it's just a matter of going around and taking your time with this new blue-purple mixture. When it comes to areas such as the shoulder pad, I'm focusing on a transitional colour between the light and the dark, so I started out with the heavy pigment at the top and then worked my way down with the brush backwards and forwards, and this gave a nice feathered transition between the two areas. So that should give us a nice transition between blue and purple. And this is what the Hearthkin warrior looks like with our third paint colour applied. And as you can see, it's really starting to give that synthwave aesthetic. For the next step, I've added a fair chunk of Arhiman blue from Games Workshop into the mixture to start going into those electric blue tones. Now this isn't an exact science, so this is roughly 25% of the new Arhiman blue, 25% of the purple, and 50% heavy blue, but I'd have a play around with it and find a colour that you like. The trick is to go quite blue, but not too stark that it's providing a ridiculously bright jump in colour. And with this, I'm going to really start refining shapes of where I want my highlights to go to be. And what I'm doing here is taking a wet brush and feathering out the paint. I've kept it quite thin to aid me to do this, but I really want to start looking at blending into this blue. Some places this is going to be an edge highlight, and in fact I am doing it as an edge highlight along these chest panels here. But I've also covered maybe 10 to 20% of that panel section to do as a bit more of a reflex highlight. And with that wet brush, it's really allowed us to get a lot more of a blended tone rather than just a straight neat edge highlight. And with this, it's just a matter of going around and picking up those reflexes and those highlighted areas that are going to hit the light the most and picking them out with this new blue colour. And this is where your model is really going to pop. So take your time, and I'm going to put this on fast forward so you can see the areas that I've covered. And with this, as always, I'm using a wet brush once I've applied a bit of paint to feather it out to ensure that there's a nice smooth blend between the colours. But this is a very sketching style, so don't worry if the blend isn't perfect. Especially with the size of the model, this is going to look really great on the tabletop. The brilliant thing about this style is it doesn't overly matter too much where you put your highlights. The idea with this model is that it's a blue-purple armour, and it's got these light sources that are a neon blue and a neon pink. And with this sketching style, it really lends the fact that there's light shining onto this armour, so you don't have to worry about whether that panel you're painting is in the right area for you to paint a highlight, and it doesn't have to be particularly neat either, because we're trying to give that look of sci-fi glowy lights that are hitting this model, giving this nice almost pearlescent finish to the model. And this is what the model looks like once I've added that blue semi-edge highlight, semi-zenithal highlight mix onto the model. For the last step in the electric blue highlighting of this model, I'm coming in with neat Arhiman blue from Games Workshop, and with this I'm doing a selective edge highlight on all the sharpest edges that I want to be picked out in a blue highlight. For example, I'm doing the area around the helmet, over this little chest light, and picking out all the sharp edges along his armour panels. And because we're going to be coming in next with a bright pink highlight, I wouldn't highlight every single edge with this colour. Normally I'd suggest doing a zenithal when it comes to doing your edge highlighting, so you don't highlight the edges that are in shadow because the light wouldn't be hitting there. Your edge highlight is showing a final reflex highlight. So I would look for things that are looking to pick up a very bright blue colour. So I'd imagine a direction that this blue light is coming from or hitting from, and painting in that highlight as a very thin line where that light is going to be hitting. So here I'm doing this very central light, slightly above and slightly forward of the model, so that his faceplate, the area around the head, maybe like a cowl, is being hit, the edges of his chest armour are being hit, and a reflex highlight down them to show that it's a shiny panel. I'm picking out a very thin highlight across the chest panel, and this is a freehand line here, but if you keep this thin and brace your hands against each other on the edge of the table, you'll find that this is a very simple little line to do. And it's just a matter of going around and picking out where you want that blue highlight to be. Here is what the Hearthkin Warrior looks like once that blue highlight has been applied. I think it looks kind of cool. For the last step, and really selling this cyberpunk synthwave aesthetic, I'm coming in with Empress Children for Games Workshop. And what I'm going to be doing with this bright pink is picking out all the rivets and doing an edge highlight in the areas that I didn't edge highlight with the Arhiman blue. This pink is a wildly different colour to the blues that we're painting for the last few steps, and it's really going to pop and add to some contrast. And due to the purple shadow tones we've laid down, it's actually going to look like it's meant to be there. And just like with the blue step, I am looking at picking out areas that I want to have looking like this pink light is also hitting the model. And it is totally up to you how much you apply. But as it's quite a contrasting colour to the rest of the model, I would always recommend trying to do a little bit, seeing how you think it looks, and then coming back in and doing a bit more till you get a look that you desired. Due to the fact that we've been sketching in different highlights and layerings, it can be quite difficult to take this away once it's been applied. Due to the sketchy nature of this paint style, I'm adding in a few small lines to represent scratches onto the model, and these can also act as light reflex. This is an entirely optional step, but it does add a bit more of a sci-fi video gaming aspect to the models. It is purely a matter of taste though, so if you don't like the scratching marks, I would just stick to remaining with the edge highlights. And it's just a matter of going around the model, picking out the bits that you want to be pink. And I would say try to add a bit in where there's every little bit of blue, so there is a nice contrast and a nice mix of the pink and blue, really showing the signs of two brightly neon tubes hitting this model from different angles. And this is how it turned out once I'd added that pink edge highlight. If you keep it right next to the blue and even overlap some of your highlights, you'll find you'll get a really striking synthwave cyberpunk look that's really easy to pull off. And with that, the blue-pink cyberpunk synthwave armor on this Hearthkin Votann warrior is now complete. I've painted in the gun holster and the leather areas black so you can see how vibrant and striking this armor effect is. If you've liked this tutorial, why not consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. You'll get further tutorials in your news feed, just like this one and many others. So, thank you very much if you've made it all the way to the end, and I'll see you next time.